8. Pact between the European Union and Mercosur. I'll tell you the arguments of those complaining about this entire free trade agreement. However, I remind you that in the previous video, I told you the arguments in favor. The idea, as always, is for you to hear what everyone says, and then you decide what convinces you most, right? I'm an opinion eunuch. I don't have any. Alright, let's begin. These are the 10 negative points. First, there will be unfair competition in agriculture, mainly because with all the restrictions there are in Europe for farmers and people in the countryside, like don't use antibiotics, don't use pesticides, ensure animal welfare, etc. Well, that means more of your animals will die, you'll have much worse harvests, which means ultimately your overall production decreases, and therefore you have to sell it at a higher price. But South American producers don't have such strict regulations, and they're going to flood the European market with their incredibly low prices. Secondly, it's somewhat related to the previous point. Food quality is going to decrease in Europe because the sanitary and traceability standards in Mercosur countries are lower, and this could even pose a public health risk. Thirdly, the only ones who profit here are the countries producing technology and industry, which is precisely what South America lacks. Ultimately, we're going to trade cows for cars, and this will be the final blow for European agriculture, leading to its demise, as always, doing what Germany dictates. The treaty could mean the deindustrialization of Mercosur, and seeing that it's more profitable to sell agricultural products to Europe, then the entire economy would revolve around those raw materials, since competing against German technology would be foolish, thus perpetuating the colonial role. Fifth, so much agricultural production in America will mean new fields will be needed, displacing indigenous populations and small farmers, not to mention the savage deforestation that will occur. Sixth, in Mercosur countries, if European companies start winning public contracts, it will only mean that governments, instead of investing in local businesses, will give the money to foreigners, meaning the country's money will go abroad. Europe gets really intense about protecting the environment, saying it can block shipments of certain Mercosur products if they see the forests aren't being cared for there. But what fault do South Americans bear? When Europe cut down all its forests centuries ago, just leave them alone. Enough of this green colonialism. Eighth, not to mention that Europe is constantly claiming we must protect the environment, yet now they will import food from the other side of the world instead of promoting local goods that don't require so much polluting transportation. Ninth, the cost of medications for Mercosur will rise because Europe wants its pharmaceutical firms to be able to extend the patent duration for their generic drugs. And 10th, with so much division within Europe, with countries like France voting against the treaty, instead of this being a way to gain international influence, all it shows is that the European Union is increasingly divided and that everyone is only looking out for their own interests. Just as a side note, the EU, trying to appease its farmers, announced that if a Mercosur product is 5% cheaper than the European equivalent, an investigation will be launched to check compliance with all regulations. They will also inject more aid into the sector, but this seems insufficient for now. Many farmers have already stated they will continue striking and protesting. What do you think? Have you seen the other video with the arguments in favor yet? If you compare it, well, do you think this pact in general will be good or bad? I'll read a comment for you. See you later, Compexos.